Welcome to another program from the Cognitive Institute. I'm joined by Joe Murdoch, one of our volunteers.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and apparently you are quite the expert on maple sugaring at home.
Yeah.
So what do we need to make this?
Well, so first off, you're going to have a maple tree. That part's obvious. Here in Pennsylvania, we have about 3 to 4 trees you want to try and tap. So sugar maple is going to be the best. That has about 3% sugar content right off the bat. But if you don't have sugar maples in your yard, you can also do a red maple, a black maple, or a silver maple.
Okay, so we need trees. We need the right time of year, which is now.
Yep, yeah, so we're not quite done with winter, but it's not quite spring yet. So typically here in PA, tapping season runs from about Valentine's Day to the end of March. So that gives you about 10 or 11 weeks. Generally what you need is warm temperatures in the daytime and low temperatures below freezing in the evening.
We certainly have that. So we've got the tools. I have some trees on site I'd love to show you, so let's go out and see them.
Alright, sounds good.
So, how about some actual sugar maples? We planted some recently just over here.
So these guys are a little bit too small. Typically when you're looking to tap a tree, it needs to be at least 10 inches in diameter. Basically what we know from that is a tree that's 10 inches in diameter is about 40 years old, which is what you want to be tapping. Now for every extra 5 to 10 inches, you can actually add an additional tap. So if you say you have a tree that's around 40 inches, you can actually have more than one tree tap in that tree.
Okay, so here we have some silver maples. You can tell by the clusters of their seed pods and measure it.
Alright, this looks good. We can do a couple here.
Okay, so we need our drill. How do you drill this hole, Joe? What kind of angle?
So you want to drill it at an angle. Typically you want to go in about 2 inches deep. Now this won't actually hurt the tree. This will heal up at the end of the season, so this is a renewable process. You're not hurting the tree in any way when you're doing this. Typically you want to make sure your bag or bucket's about 3 to 4 feet off the ground. We don't want it so high on the trunk that we can't reach it, but we also don't want it on the ground where it's going to get dirt and bugs in it.
Sure, so and the slight angle makes it drip.
Yes, yep. So basically what's going to happen is as the temperature rises during the day, all the tree sap goes from the base of the tree up to the branches at the top. And then in the evening, when it starts to get cold again, that sap is actually going to run back into the root system, but instead it's going to collect out into our bucket.
So a slippity slide of sap.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've got these spiles or taps. We just knock these in the tree.
Yep.
Put the bag on, tie it up, and how soon from this will I have a full bag of sap?
Well, so your mileage is going to vary. So like I said, weather is a really important part of this. But this year is supposed to be a pretty good season, so hopefully by this time next weekend we might have a full bag.
Alright, so we got some drip out there already, even just after we drilled. I noticed, Joe, the sap is not brown. It's actually as clear as water.
Yes, that's right. So actually, in fact, tree sap is mostly water when it comes out. Earlier I had mentioned that sugar maples are the best because they're about 3% sugar, but that still leaves you with about 97% water. So obviously what you're going to have to do is, once you collect all your sap, typically the process is you boil it down, and what that does is as the water evaporates, you get all the sugars condensed into that sticky, delicious syrup.
Okay, well I'll see you in a few weeks then, and we'll do this down at the fires in the historic area.
I'm looking forward to it.
So Joe, we've gathered 10 gallons of maple. I've prepared a fire. Can you bring it over to me?
Yep, there we go. Just give me 1 sec.
So we filtered it as we were collecting the sap, and so what's the next stage in making it?
So the next stage is just going to be boiling it down and reducing it. Basically what you want to do is you want to build up heat and evaporate the water, which is mostly what the sap's based out of. And then that's going to leave all the sugars at the bottom of our pot that'll start to caramelize and turn into the syrup.
I actually have a great source from the Pennsylvania Gazette 1788 about this. He talks about how cane sugar from the Indies is so expensive and how Americans can make their own sugar much cheaper if they just tap the maple trees on their property.
Yeah, it's a very simple process. I do want to point out one thing too really quick. We're going to be doing it outside today, but honestly, if you don't have the space outside, you can just as easily do this with like a stovetop pot or pan. A lot of folks, if you have like a smaller amount, would just do it right on their, right on their stove, and it's just as easy.
Most people associate maple syrup with the northern colonies, and up in Connecticut, there were towns that would make 40,000 pounds weight of sugar in the months of February and March. Down here in Pennsylvania, though, we know it is being done. German farmer in Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, where the maple trees grow as plentifully as oaks or pines in many other places, made 300 pounds of sugar in 1 year, which he sold to his neighbors and the travellers for 9p a pound. So an ordinary like this, or a public house, could be a place where a farmer would take some of that extra crop that he didn't have to grow, it's just a tree, and he's got something else he can turn into a monetary value for his neighbours.
Yeah, maple syrup was also really popular. A lot of people don't realize, but it has curative properties. So if you didn't have salt readily available, you could use maple syrup as a substitute in some instances, or meats or breads or anything like that.
So we've been boiling for 6 hours, and we're left with something that looks more like the maple syrup you might recognise from the store shelves.
Yeah.
What's happened to it?
So essentially, we're pretty much done with the evaporation process. All the syrup has condensed at the bottom because of the heat. So now we're basically ready to do the last step of the refining process. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put it in jars after we filter it through a cheesecloth, and then we're just going to let it set. Just like a dark space, like a cupboard or somewhere in the basement, we're just going to let it set overnight. That'll help refine the process and make it a lighter grade.
So we could have this for breakfast in the morning then?
We could, yeah. Typically it's a 24-hour process.
Alright, and how long will it last?
So as long as you keep it sealed, it'll last indefinitely. A lot of times people will see after they've opened a jar of maple syrup, you'll get like this crust on the outside. That's actually not dangerous at all. Just kind of scrape it off. It won't harm you at all.
Cool. Well, thank you, Joe. This has been an experience for me, combining nature and history, and it's definitely something you can try at home. If you have a silver maple or a sugar maple or even some different species of trees, think about tapping them next winter and making their own syrup for a gift.